So now you have checked whether everyone can hear us, we will get started. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar on Erasmus Plus Key Action 1 Adult Education. This webinar is aimed at applicants looking to apply for funding under the decentralized strand of Key Action 1 known as Adult Education Staff Mobility. The webinar will primarily focus on how to fill out the application form, as well as giving you some hints and tips to help you with the application process. And now we will just show you our lovely faces for a bit. Sorry, we need some time to connect. Hello, this is me. I'm Laura Voss and I'm an assistant project manager working with the Erasmus Plus team, and I will be your presenter today.
Hi, my name is Eva Konsek and I'm assistant project manager and I'm working within the Erasmus Plus team, and today I'll be answering your questions.
Hi, my name's Phoebe and I'll be moderator too today, so I'll be answering your questions via the question box. Thanks.
Okay, that was us. And now that you have seen us, we would like to see some action from you. So we will launch our very first poll and would appreciate if you could respond to these following questions. Okay, you should see it now on your screen. And if you could just respond to that, it would be great. Okay, and there you can see the results. So yeah, that's very positive. So thank you very much for that. It's good to know. So just to give you an overview of what we will be covering today, I will start by giving you a quick introduction to Key Action 1 Mobility for Adult Education Staff and what funding is available. The main focus of this session will be on the application form. We'll first talk you through what you need to do beforehand, then we will go through the application form together, filling out certain parts, showing you how to use the distance calculator and how to validate the form. Then we will round up the key points. Finally, we'll manage the next steps and how to contact us for support in the run-up to the deadline mentioned. Sorry. Okay, Key Action 1, Adult Education. Funding can be used to support staff engaged in adult education activities, including support staff, managers, and guidance staff, as well as teachers and trainers. The training must respond to clearly identified staff development or training needs and must contribute to your organization's strategic approach on modernizing or internationalizing education provision. The learning outcomes of the training must also be appropriately recognized and shared widely with others in your organization. Key Action 1 offers opportunities for adult education staff to participate in mobility activities. Organizations active in adult education can apply for funding to support any of the following mobility activities within a project. First, teaching training assignments, where staff deliver teaching or training in a partner organization's award, or staff training, where staff participate in structured courses or training events, or undertake a job shadowing experience in an adult education organization abroad. Funding can be used to support staff engaged in adult education activities, including support staff, managers, and guidance staff, as well as teachers and trainers. The training must respond to clearly identified staff development or training needs, or must contribute to your organization's strategic approach on education provision. The learning outcomes of the training must also be appropriately recognized and shared widely with others in your organization as part of the dissemination activities. It is important to link your Key Action 1 Staff Mobility project to the overarching European priorities and show the added value of carrying out your project on a European level. In doing so, it is important to keep the general objectives of the Erasmus Plus program in mind. For more information about this can be found in Part A of the Erasmus Plus program guide. Page 27 has the specific objectives. You should also consider the following important features of the Erasmus Plus program. First, recognition and validation of skills and qualifications, including specific learning outcomes from planned activity, using, for example, Europass mobility certificates or Europass CV. Second, dissemination and exploitation of project results, for example, the use of the Erasmus Plus logo as well as the Erasmus Plus project results platform. It is important that the learning is disseminated widely through the organization. This can be done in the form of a dedicated workshop or informal staff feedback session. Lastly, international dimension, for example, the cooperation with partner countries. Please also have a look at the specific mobility project objectives on page 27 in the program guide. For example, to improve the level of key competences and skills, in particular through increased opportunities for learning mobility and through strengthened cooperation between education and training and the world of work. Second, to enhance the international dimension of education and training, in particular through cooperation between program and partner country institutions in the field of adult education. And third, to improve the teaching and learning of languages and promote the EU sports linguistic diversity and intercultural awareness. You should also ensure that your proposed project activity fits in with your organization's or consortium's wider European international strategy. Funding for Key Action 1 staff mobility projects is very competitive, so you must ensure that you have fully justified the activity and its impacts on your staff and the organization, and also have planned your project activities well in order to submit a high-quality application. It is important to note that Erasmus Plus funding cannot be assessed by individuals, so an organization must apply on behalf of the participants it plans to include in the project. If you're planning to apply as a national mobility consortium, you must have a minimum of 3 UK-based partners. Please see page 8 of the guide for applicants for more information on national mobility consortia. There are no minimum receiving partner numbers under adult education mobility, and you do not have to list the partners in the application form. However, we have found that the application is strengthened if you do so. Projects can last from 12 to 24 months. However, the project activity must be well planned, and you should ensure you have allowed enough time for all the activities within the project to take place. Staff mobility activities can last from a minimum of 2 days up to 2 months, excluding travel time, and must be consecutive. Once you have decided what it is you want to do, you have found a partner or partners, and thought about how to address different European priorities, you will need to complete the following 2 registration steps. You will need to register on ECAS first. ECAS is the European Commission Authentication Service, and you will need to register here to use any type of external European Commission tool. We have a video guide on our website which will talk you through how to do this, and you can find the link to it in your handout. You will then need to obtain a participant identification code, short PIC, to access the participant portal. The participant portal is a single entry point for the electronic administration of EU-funded projects related to Erasmus+. You will be prompted to provide information about your organization as well as upload documents relating to your organization. These documents are therefore needed to prove the legal status and financial capacity of your organization, and it is essential that the information on these documents matches the information on the portal. If your organization already has a PIC, you should use that one and not create a new one. Please make sure all the info is still up to date. If your organization does not have a PIC, and please double check this, you will need to obtain one. If you are applying for a new PIC, make sure you register on the correct participant portal. The link provided in the handout is for the Education, Audiovisual, Culture, Citizenship and Volunteering portal, which is the correct one. However, if you are simply to search on the internet, you might come across the Research Participant portal, which is not the correct portal for Erasmus+. You can find further information about the application process in Part C of the program guide. You should also download the partner mandate templates, if applicable, from our website, and have them filled in by your respective partners and signed by both parties. Please make sure that all the information, such as the name of the organization, address, and legal representative on the partner mandate is identical to the information in the application form. Otherwise, the partner mandate will not be accepted. After developing your project idea and completing the registration process, you can move on to the application form. The application form is an e-form and will need to be submitted online by the applicant organization by the deadline of 2nd February 2016. Please keep in mind that this is 11 a.m. UK time, as the deadline for applications is 12 noon Brussels time. You will need to use your PIC as well as your partner's PICs to fill out the application form. It is very important that the PIC information is correct, as it will be used throughout the life of your project, and it is your responsibility to keep the information up to date. To make sure you have the correct Key Action 1 application form in front of you, you should check that it states Call 2016, Round 1, for the 2nd February 2016 deadline. I will show this to you later on when we have a look at the actual application form. All applications submitted to the UK National Agency should be completed in English. We will now go into the actual application form and run through it with you. As we go along, we will show you how to complete some sections of the form, as well as giving you hints and tips based on feedback from previous application rounds. We will be using a test application form for this exercise, as we cannot use applications from previous rounds due to data protection rules. Here you see our application form. This application form, which is an e-form, is available to download from the Apply for Adult Education Funding page of the Erasmus Plus website under Key Action 1. You should save it as a PDF to your PC. Please check that you have downloaded the correct application form for 2016. As mentioned earlier on the slide, you can do this by checking the following. Key action should be learning mobility of individuals. The action is mobility of learners and staff. Action type, adult education, staff mobility. Call is 2016, and the round is 1. As I go through the application form, I will use the scroll bar to scroll up and down the page to the relevant sections of the form. I will concentrate on hints and tips for each section of the form as we go through the sections, rather than describing all the information needed. And I will then concentrate on the sections dealing with project activities and budget, showing how these link to each other, as well as giving you hints and tips on how to complete these sections. You will need to select the language you are using to complete the application form from the drop-down menu. For the applications made to the UK National Agency, this should always be English. You will need to input your start and end date and choose the duration. You have to input your start date and choose the duration of your project, which will automatically fill in the end date for you. The start date must be between 1st of June and 31st of December 2016. Ensure that the project duration selected is realistic for the action you are applying for. This is the total duration for your whole project, not just for the proposed mobilities, and will need to encompass all project-related activities from promotion through to evaluation and dissemination. Okay, now we go to section C, participant organizations. Remember, when you put in your PIC and your partner's PIC, a partner's PIC number, so the information will automatically populate from the information in the participant portal. Just click here, check PIC. Check the details, and if you notice any details are incorrect for you or your partner, they will need to be corrected in the portal. And please make sure you're connected to the internet when you do this, otherwise it will not be able to check the PIC. Okay, there we have our partner organization. Up again. If you're applying as part of a national adult education consortium, please ensure that you include the minimum required number of 3 UK partners. If your application contains only 2 UK organisations, you and 1 other UK partner, the application will be ineligible. In Key Action 1 Adult Education Mobility projects, the receiving partner does not need to be identified at application stage, although doing so will strengthen the quality of your application. A better quality application will be specific and name the key persons who will be delivering the project and their skills. Explain how your organization's previous experience of delivering projects or activities has developed the skills and knowledge needed for the activities you propose in the application. Please explain how the activities proposed in this application fit alongside other programs or activities you deliver. This will help the assessors understand what needs and expertise your organization has, and this will make it easier to see the potential impact of the project on your organization. Make sure it is clear from the description of each partner's work and expertise why they have been chosen to participate in your project. This applies to all partners, including smaller organizations which may be involved. Each page of the application has a validate button, so you can check information as you go. This will identify if any mandatory sections have been missed and any errors in the way the information has been input. As you can see, the staff numbers are missing. We'll also show you where the information is missing, and I will just take this moment to also tell you that everything with a red border has to be filled in. So please make sure you do not forget these. But if you push validate, it will tell you so. And now I'm going to be cheeky because I know that the numbers are also not in the partner. So we'll do this now. And validate again. Doing this will pick up all missing sections, errors within the form. Again, you can see the email address is not in the correct form. So as you can see, there is something input here, but since it is an email one, we do need the add something part, or otherwise it won't validate. Okay. I'm not validating now because that will spoil the surprise for later on, so please bear with me. Normally, if you go through the application, please validate as often as possible to make sure you input all necessary information. We will now go to Section D, European Development Plan. The purpose of the European Development Plan is to ensure that the planned mobility activities are relevant both for the individual participants and for the organization as a whole. It is also to ensure that the activities will have a positive impact on the quality of teaching and learning provided by the applicant organization or the consortium partners here in the UK, and should demonstrate that the proposed activities tie in with the organizations or consortium's wider European and international strategy. Please see the guide for applicants for more information on completing this section. Just a few hints and tips. Show a clear link with the priority of Key Action 1 and the action objectives and principles by carefully considering the aims of Key Action 1, which are on page 30 to 33 of the program guide. You should also think about which of the general priorities for the field of education and training listed on page 27 of the program guide are relevant. Please explain the specific needs or issues your project will address based on the genuine needs analysis you or others have done in relation to the participants and organizations you plan to involve. Describe the specific needs of specified participants and organizations and show how your project will respond to these. It is very important that you should demonstrate how the staff you will select to take part in activities will benefit directly from the project proposal and how the skills and competences gained will be integrated in your organization's strategic development. Next is Section E, Description of the project. You must provide a rationale for your project and identify both the project's objectives and the issues or needs the project will seek to address. You should describe the added value in terms of the skills and knowledge participants will acquire from completing a European mobility. If you've added partners to the application form, you will also need to include information regarding what each of the partners will bring to the project in terms of their expertise, skills, and experience of working with the identified target group. You should include any relevant information about your relationship with these partners that may help strengthen your application. You also have the opportunity to choose any relevant topics addressed by the project at the end of this section by using the drop-down boxes and adding more if applicable. Just click plus button or the minus button. Next is section F, Participants Profile. You should provide details about how the participants will be identified and selected, which activities they will participate in, how they will contribute to the project, and how the project will benefit them. You need to explain in detail what recruitment and selection processes you and any partners will undertake. For instance, how many participants you will involve and how the processes will ensure the most suitable participants are selected whilst ensuring a fair process. Learning mobility for adult education staff aims at raising the key competences and skills of staff in adult education in order to increase the quality of teaching and learning in all forms and to make them relevant to the needs of the labour market and society at large. Particular attention will be given to projects addressing the teaching and learning needs of disadvantaged adult learners, including refugees, asylum seekers, and migrants. It is expected that adult education organizations use learning mobility of their staff to strategically and in terms of internationalizing the organization and of raising the capacity of it. Your learning outcomes must also be clearly linked to the aims of your project and relevant to the needs of your participants. For example, agreed with both the staff of the organizations, course providers, and partner organizations offering training events or job shadowing activities. You will need to include the expected competences that will be acquired or improved by your participants, both personal and professional. You also need to include what validation tools will be used. Don't forget recognition of learning outcomes, for example by using Europass. It is not sufficient to list them. You also need to explain how you are going to use them. If you're not familiar with Europass, you can find more information on page 268 of the program guide. Next is section G, Preparation. The specific preparation activities will depend on the objectives and activities of your particular project and the needs of your participants. However, they may include some or all of the following. Organizing practical arrangements such as arranging appropriate accommodation, transport, insurance, visas, ensuring the safety and protection of participants, planning and organizing, mentoring and support, etc. Language and/or cultural preparation for participants, practical or logistical orientation, any technical training or preparation for particular activities, or agreeing learning needs and objectives with participants. Section G2, Project Management. Explain clearly how you will ensure that the project and the grant are managed effectively and transparently in order to deliver the planned objectives, activities, and high-quality results within the time frame and budget available. Describe how the project activities and results will be monitored and evaluated during the life of the project, and give details of the staff who will be involved in these activities and how often quality checks will be undertaken. Please address how you plan to handle project risks or difficulties. For example, what processes you will use to handle conflict resolution within the partnership. Finally, provide specific details of the evaluation methods and indicators of achievement, qualitative and quantitative, you plan to use in order to assess whether and to what extent your project has achieved its objectives and results. G3, Preparation of Participants. This is where you will specify what activities you will offer to participants in order to prepare them for the mobility. For example, linguistic, cultural, pastoral, and also what activities staff will need to undertake in order to prepare for the proposed activity. moving on to section H, main activities. This is a really important part of the application and is divided into 3 questions. In the first box, you need to include the main activities you plan to organize, providing a description of the role each project partner will play. In the second box, you need to detail what communication methods you will use for all stakeholders and explain the rationale. At the same time, what cooperation is expected. Finally, you need to further describe the role of your partners and other stakeholders. In addition, you need to explain what monitoring and support activities will take place and who will carry these out and evaluate the participants' progress. H1, activity details. We will cover this section in more detail as it relates to the activities which will feed into the budget. It is very important to keep in mind that the data input here will need to correspond to the data in the budget section. Otherwise, you will not be able to validate your eform. The activities that you need to detail in this section are grouped under the 2 broad categories of job shadowing, structured courses, training events, and teaching training assignments abroad. You should add a table for each activity you plan to include during your project and select a number of answers from the drop-down menus available, and I will demonstrate this now. I'd like to highlight a point here. You will need to use the distance calculator to fill out the distance band. A link to this is provided in both the program guide as well as the guide for applicants. The distance is from cities and towns, so choose the nearest one to your head office and the head office of your partners. The band that comes up is the band which you will need to input into the application form. This will then automatically populate with the unit cost. This cost is a contribution towards the return journey costs. Please ensure that you put in the right band, as this will be checked at assessment and if incorrect could affect the quality of the application. I will now hand over to my colleague Eva.
Hello, I will talk you through the information Laura is putting into the form at the moment. Laura has selected structured courses training events from the drop-down menu. She has also selected the United Kingdom as the country of origin and Finland as the destination country. To work out the correct distance band between the UK and the partner training organisation, we'll switch to the distance calculator. The distance calculator works by you inputting the town or city that will be the point of departure and arrival for the training. Our test organisation is based in Birmingham and the training venue is in Finland. As you can see, as Laura starts to type the name of the location, the distance calculator suggests destinations. Clicking the Calculate button provides the distance in kilometers, and it is this number which dictates which distance band you need to select. Laura will now switch back to the application form to input this information. Laura has selected a distance band that matches the distance calculator. You will need to add the duration of the placement or activity, and if any travel days are to include it, you also need to input the number here. As you can see, we've input 2 travel days. You will then need to input the total number of participants, which includes any accompanying persons if needed. Laura has input a total of 10 participants. If your project includes participants with special needs or accompanying persons, you should include the number of these here as well. You can use the plus symbol to add more flows for an activity or the minus symbol to remove the last flow in the list. You can also add new activities and remove activities using the Add Activity and Remove Activity buttons.
Thanks, Eva. I hope you all found that useful. And now we will move on to section A. Sorry, that was my heritage coming through there. Section I, summary, no, follow-up, sorry. Be as specific as possible about the impact of the project in addressing the needs you have identified earlier in the application. You need to describe the expected impacts on individual participants, the participating organizations, the target groups they work with, and any other relevant stakeholders. For dissemination, you need to show you have carefully planned your dissemination and mention what messages you want to share, what activities you will undertake to do this, and when. You should be as clear as possible about who you will target with your dissemination activities. Describe the impacts you expect to achieve at local, regional, national, European, or international levels. You should address the expected impacts both during the life of the project and after it has ended. It is important to show how the project will deliver a greater potential value than a similar cooperation project between organizations within the same country. Plan for dissemination activities to take part throughout your project lifetime and not just at the end. Please have a look at Annex 2 of the program guide, which provides practical guidance on dissemination of your project. You should provide specific details of the methods and indicators you will use to measure impact, at what stage you will use them, and who will be involved. Don't forget your evaluation activities should consider the learning outcomes and how the project has contributed to addressing the overall aims of Key Action 1. Detail the qualitative and quantitative indicators of achievement that you plan to use in order to assess whether your project has achieved its objectives and results. You should attach numerical targets to quantitative indicators wherever possible and explain who will be looking after this task. Moving down to section J, budget. You will find more detailed guidance on how to complete the budget section of the application in our application guidance and in part B of the program guide. It is important to be aware that if the project is approved, the applicant organization will receive the grant and will be responsible for distributing it amongst the partners to ensure the effective delivery of the project. Getting the budget right is an important part of the application. It is important that you have carefully considered and justified the budget requested. There is no maximum grant amount for an adult education mobility project. However, you should ensure that the budget requested meets the needs of the activities planned and is realistic in respect of proportionality. This is explained in further detail on page 16 of the Guide for Applicants. It is important to note that the budget under all cost headings is built up on a unit cost basis per participant, except for exceptional costs and special needs support, which are budgeted for and reimbursed on the basis of actual costs. Unit costs are a set amount per participant, which is a contribution towards the cost. For some unit costs, you will spend more, and for some perhaps less than the unit cost. Unit costs are used to help make the funding simpler to understand and manage. Actual or real costs. As the name says, you will receive funding for the actual cost incurred. Real costs are used for the budget heading, exceptional costs, and special needs support, and can be fully or partly reimbursed. The budget categories for Key Action 1 Adult Education Staff Mobility Project are travel, organizational support, individual support, course fees, special needs support, exceptional costs. Under travel, organizational support, and individual support, the budget is calculated on a unit cost basis. Your request for this in section J1 should reflect the main activities you've detailed in section H1. The country of destination should be the country in which the applicant or one of the partners, program countries only, is based. Most of the information has been pre-filled based on the information you already entered in the activity details section, as you can see on your screen. In section J2, you will check the request for individual support, which is a contribution to the subsistence costs of participants during the activity. Costs are calculated on a unit cost basis per participant, depending on the type of activity, the duration, and the country where the activity will take place. In section G3, you need to check your request for organizational support. That is, money to be used for the organization, management, and implementation of your meetings or main activities. Once again, most of this information has been pre-filled from the activity details section. You will need to check here that the pre-filled information is correct, and if not, amend section H1. Section G4 relates to the request of funding for course fees, if applicable, and is a contribution to the cost of fees for the enrollment in courses and is based on a unit cost. You will only be able to claim for course fees if you have listed structured courses, training events as one of the activities under section H1 activities details. Section J5 is to request any special needs support, that is, any additional costs that your organization or any partner will incur to enable participants with disability and accompanying persons to take part in your project. For example, specialist equipment or accompaniment. Special needs support is calculated on an actual cost basis and will be assessed case by case. Therefore, it is important that you make clear in the description of costs box what items you need and the cost breakdown. You should also detail the participation of special needs participants in the main narrative of the application. Section J6. Exceptional costs are to be budgeted as actual costs, and you need to clearly state in the description of costs box why you need these items and the cost breakdown. Things that can be considered as exceptional costs under Key Action 1 Mobility Project for adult education staff are costs connected to providing financial guarantee if the national agency asks for it. 70% of eligible costs will be covered. Expensive travel costs of participants from outermost regions and OCTs, up to 80% of eligible costs can be claimed. Please make sure you have clearly described the main activities of your project and that the budget you request is consistent with your description, because budget requests can only be accepted if it is clear what the money is being requested for. As a reminder, a person with special needs is defined under Erasmus Plus as a potential participant whose physical, mental, or health-related situation is such that his or her participation in the project would not be possible without extra financial support. Next is Section K, Project Summary. This summary will be used by the EC and the NA in their publications and will also feed into the Erasmus Plus dissemination platform, so it should be written with this in mind. It should be written in clear, plain English, avoiding any technical or sector-specific jargon to ensure that it can be understood by the general public. Section Key 1. Check that the information is absolutely correct in case where it is not, you can go back and make any necessary changes in the earlier sections. Next is going to section N now. Sorry to rush through this. Section N, annexes. Compulsory annexes are the signed declaration of honor, which you can see on your screen now, the scanned mandates of each participating organization to the applicant, signed by both parties, and the mandates of each member of the National Mobility Consortium, if applicable, signed by both. These documents can be downloaded from the Key Documents section of our How to Apply Key Action 1 Adult Education Staff Mobility page on the Erasmus Plus website. Your project application will be ineligible without these attachments, so please don't forget them. If there is still some room for attachments, once these are attached, you are able to attach other relevant annexes, such as training needs analysis and a sample work program, for example. A hint and tip here is to keep it concise. We expect all the information that is key to the quality and content of your project will be included within the main body of the application form. We go to O, to the submission. Sorry. Okay, So it's actually section P. And now a few final words on the submission procedure. Validate as you go, as I said earlier, and after completing the application. Now we're going to do validate again. You'll be taken to any sections that are incorrect or have been missed. These will need to be resolved before you can submit the eForm. Okay, and as you can see here, we have a field with no text inside. So we're just going to put test and go down to submit. Okay, validate. What? Sorry about this. So yeah, as you can see, it works, and I will show you everything that has been missing. And there we have it. The form is valid, so all the parts have been filled in. Of course, it only checks if there's actually something written in it. It doesn't say anything about the quality, as you can see here, because we've only written in test. And I would advise against sending this in to us. And we have further up here, as you have seen after when I scrolled down. We have a checklist, so please read this and the data protection notice to make sure you have done everything correctly. Ensure you are connected to the internet when you submit, otherwise it will not work. And save the final completed version of your application form to your PC in case of any submission issues. Note the deadline mentioned in the form is Brussels time. The form needs to be submitted online by 11 a.m. UK time on 2nd February 2016. We would advise you to leave plenty of time in completing your application and then submitting it online before the deadline in case of any unexpected technical difficulties. We will now move back to our presentation. Just a second. And we'll do another little poll. That should show up on your screen now, so it'd be great if you could answer this now. Just giving it a few seconds to give everyone a chance to think about it and answer. And we're not going to hold you to the answer now, so if you do not do what you say now, it's fine. But it's good for us to know and have a general idea. Okay, there you can see the results. So thank you very much for this. Okay, we will now continue. Once we have received your application, we do some preliminary checks on your application. Your application will not go forward to assessment if your start and end date as well as the project duration are not in line with the criteria specified in the program guide. Please see page 69. Your activities are not eligible under Key Action 1 Adult Education. You have not annexed your partner mandates, consortium or others. Or you submit your application after 11 a.m. on 2nd February 2016. As part of the assessment process, the NA will also check that the requested budget is in line with the funding rules set out in Part B of the program guide. If these rules are not respected, your requested budget may be reduced upon assessment. Please make sure that you read the program guide and the National Agency Guide for Applicants available on our website for further details on the eligibility requirements before you submit your application. The Erasmus Plus national agencies will be validating your organization and any applicable partner organizations. This is a separate process to the assessment of your application. Therefore, the fact that your organization has been validated does not automatically imply a successful outcome of your application. During the validation process, the national agency will check whether all the information you have put into the participant portal is complete and correct. You will check whether the required legal and financial forms have been uploaded, as well as the supporting documents. More information about this can be found in Part C of the program guide, starting on page 237. Your overseas partner will also need to be validated by the national agencies. Please note, organizations that are not valid cannot take part in Erasmus Plus funded projects. If you or your partners cannot provide the correct and fully completed documents during the validation process, This may cause significant delays to the processing of your application and may even result in the NA withdrawing its offer of funding if your application is successful. As stated, there is no maximum budget for Key Action 1 mobility for adult education staff and projects. However, the budget requested must be realistic, proportionate, and well justified within the application. We like to ensure that you are clear about the budget section. Therefore, this slide contains some repetition. There are some key points to remember about the budget. Unit cost contributions. Funding is automatically calculated depending on the unit. This can be the number of staff on a teaching or training assignment. So the costs for travel will be based on the number going to a particular destination for a set duration, or the calculation of organizational support you will receive for each participant in order to implement the project activities. The budget headings using unit costs are travel, organizational support, individual support, and course fees. Real costs contributions. This is funding for actual costs, but in some cases only a certain percentage of the costs will be covered. Budget headings using real costs are special needs support, up to 100%, and exceptional costs. Under exceptional costs, you can request additional funding to include those with fewer opportunities, to cover the costs of providing a financial guarantee if requested by the NA, up to 75%, or to cover expensive travel costs for participants from outermost regions or overseas countries and territories, up to 80%. Course fees. For costs directly linked to payment of fees for enrollment in courses, this is a contribution to unit costs. €70 per participant per day, the maximum of €700 per participant in the mobility project. You must specify the details of the course and how this will feed into the development of staff within the application form. It is important to note that any request for financial support to cover special needs support and exceptional costs must be clearly explained in the application form. The assessor will not assume anything in relation to these costs and can recommend cutting them from the budget unless adequately justified. Your budget should be appropriate to your activity and demonstrate cost-effective use of resources. The following documents must be annexed to the application form: the declaration of honor signed by the legal representative mentioned in the application, the mandates of each partner named within the application form signed by both parties, ensuring that the information is identical to that of the application form, and the mandates for any UK consortium partners signed by both parties, ensuring that the information is identical to that of the application form. We recommend that where possible, you scan different documents together into a single file. If, after checking that the annexes are within the size and file format limits, you still experience problems with attaching annexes, you can email them to erasmusplus@ecoris.com, clearly stating which application form they relate to by providing the application hash code and your organization's details and project name, but please only do this as an exception and ensure you have followed all the available guidance first. You must ensure you have validated all sections of the application before submitting, as I've shown you before. You will need to ensure that you are connected to the Internet in order to submit the completed application. You should also ensure that all sections of the form are valid and all annexes are attached before submitting the form. If there are any technical issues preventing the form from being submitted, it will say error under status. If this happens, you are unable, you should follow the alternative submission procedure. In this case, you can still submit your application by sending it via email to us within the 2 hours following the official deadline. However, the UK National Agency will only accept this submission if the error message is recorded under status in the submission summary section of the eForm with a timestamp prior to or on the deadline date and time. The following error messages, however, are not accepted as technical issues. ERR01, as this error relates to invalid data, missing fields in the eForm. This is not considered to be a technical issue and can be rectified by the applicant by correcting the application form and validating it again. ERR06, as this error means that there are errors with the annexes. For example, the total size of the attachment exceeds 5 MB or are not in the accepted file formats. This can be rectified either by reducing the size of the attachments or by removing them. Unknown, as this means that the eForm was not submitted and no submission attempts were made. Local 01, Adobe Reader security enabled. In order to submit the eForm, you must click the appropriate options in the yellow security warning bar at the top of the form. Local 02, network connection error. In order to submit the eForm, you should check your internet connection and try to submit the form again, or try a different network connection. Before we conclude, some key points for you to remember. Before and while you complete your application, refer to the Commission's documents. First of all, the program guide and the national agency's own guidance available from our website. If you have applied before, don't forget to review the feedback you have received from us, as this will include key areas of improvement which will enhance your chances of submitting a good quality application. Save the form frequently so no information is lost. Ensure correct options are selected on the application so that important sections aren't deleted. As I've said, while looking through the application form, double-check that the budget you request is accurate and well justified, and that you respect the maximum amount allowed where applicable. Provide relevant answers to the questions in the application, but remember that there is a character limit on many of the sections. You can see the limit by hovering your mouse over the answer boxes. Get someone else to proofread your application annexes, perhaps against the published award criteria. Leave enough time for completing and submitting your application before the deadline of the 2nd February. Now we have the next step on contact details. Nearly done. So to conclude, I'd like to remind you of the support the UK National Agency will be offering in the run-up to the 2nd February deadline for applications to be submitted under Key Action 1 Mobility for Adult Education Staff. A recording of this webinar will be sent to you in the next couple of days. After this webinar, you will be redirected to a feedback form. Please do fill this out, as we aim to continuously improve these webinars and have taken previous feedback on board when creating the webinars for this round. A detailed guide for applicants on how to fill out and submit the application form is available on our Erasmus Plus website. If you haven't done so already, please do sign up to our newsletter, as this provides all the most up-to-date information about the 2016 call and about the Erasmus Plus program. On our website, you can find other important information and documents to support you with completing your application. You also have a helpline where our team is available to answer your questions. And finally, we will be offering project outline feedback sessions where we will be able to provide tailored feedback on your project idea. So please look out for further information on our website. Thank you all for your attention and participation. We'll be around for a couple more minutes to answer any final questions via the chat box. And if there are any more that come up, please contact us via the erasmusplus@ecoist.com email address or the number on the screen. Our team is also available every day from Monday to Friday to answer any queries you may have via email or via our helpline. You can see the number on the slide, and you can also find it in your handout. If there are any questions we haven't managed to answer during this session this afternoon, we will get back to you by email afterwards. Do also keep an eye on the Erasmus Plus website for news and further guidance.